How many of you guys have ever had a song that just gets stuck in your head and you just can't get it out? Probably most of us, right? When I was a kid growing up, a lot of the songs that would stick in my head were songs that I didn't really want to be there. They're not necessarily songs that I would necessarily enjoy, but they were songs a lot of times related to television shows, like this one.
Here's the story of a lovely lady who was bringing up three very lovely girls. All of them had hair of gold, like their mother, the youngest one in curls.
It's the story of a man named Brady who was busy with three boys of his own. They were four men living all together, yet they were all alone.
So we remember these songs, do we? So that song's almost 50 years old. And yet still, the lyrics of that, there's some hook or some way that they created the jingle that allowed for that to stick in our heads. Well then, as I got older, there were songs that our kids would listen to with their TV shows, something like this one.
I love you, you love me.
Remember this, the big purple dinosaur?
We're a happy family with a great big hug and a kiss from me to you. Won't you say you love me too?
Yes, who could forget Barney? I know you're going to be just cursing my name later today when you can't get that out of your head. You're welcome. And then there are other songs, like popular songs, usually by bands that are sort of one-hit wonders, that they will somehow create this hook or this jingle. And most of the song you won't remember the lyrics, but there's always a chorus or a phrase that you will, like this.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Now you don't remember much of the rest of the song, but this you remember, whether you want to or not. Thank you, Zach. So why do I bring this up? Why do I introduce these crazy songs that stick in your head that won't go away? Only because I'm making a larger point this morning as we begin, and that is there are other songs that stick in our head oftentimes that will loop in our brain for days and weeks and months, even for a lifetime, like, why them and not me? Why me and not them? Why wasn't I included? Why wasn't I invited? If only I had a child, if only I had a better job, if only I had more money, if only I wasn't sick. It's so hot out, it's so cold out, and these things, they loop in our brain, and they find a lodging place, and they lead us away from the life that is life, from a life of gratitude and contentment and ultimately joy. We've been in this series called The Happy Life. This is week number 4, and every week what I'm trying to do is give you some idea of a practice or a basic rhythm that if you're operating within, that it will make for a happier life. And today I want to talk a little bit about humility. Because I think sometimes we can get caught up in our own lives and we realize that things aren't the way that we want them to be, and it causes a culture of complaint. I think sometimes our pride, our egos get in the way when things aren't working out, and that's exactly what's happening to the church in Philippi. Once upon a time, in this fledgling community that Paul helped plant, he remembered them for really good and positive things, but he gets word as he's in a Roman prison that they are turning on each other, that they're fighting and they're arguing and they're complaining. They're not thinking of others before themselves. They are thinking of themselves. How many of you ever find yourself in a position where you are just wanting to be in control, to be in charge, to call the shots, but disappointed when you're not. Me neither. Sometimes it's our pride that leads us away from the life that is life, that leads us away from abiding joy, contentment, and happiness. And the Apostle Paul, in this second chapter, in the first 15 verses, gives us an idea that there is something that can help us sort of as an antidote to this issue of complaint and pride and ego, and that is the issue of humility. And so that's what I want us to talk about. I want us to talk this morning about what it means to sing a new song, to travel a new path, to live a different way. Now, earlier in this part of the letter when Annette was reading, the Apostle Paul says to this group who is struggling very mightily, and I think oftentimes when we struggle, it is human nature to turn on those who are closest to you, because there's just more proximity. There's just an easier chance for that to happen. When things aren't going well, you just take it out on the people around you. And that's what they're doing. And so Paul says, stop being so selfish. Stop trying to impress other people. Be humble. Think of others as better than yourself. Don't look out only for your own interest, but take an interest in others too. And then he gets to the part which is kind of the earworm. It's this middle part of his letter where he takes a chorus from a very popular hymn of that day, like a song that they would have been familiar with, like Who Let the Dogs Out? Right? They would have known this song, and he puts it into this letter because he wants this to bore itself in their brain. He wants them to be thinking these thoughts, because in the midst of their conflict, they're not acting the way that would be reminiscent of the way that he left them, and certainly not that would be respectful of the Christ that they're following. So he says to them this. This is actually a song. You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had, that though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. And when he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God, and he died a criminal's death on a cross. Coming into the world and leaving the world, Christ came in humility. He took on human flesh, but not only did he take on human flesh and was born as a baby into our world, as he grew up, he became a servant or slave to all. He took the lowest position. He wasn't garnering for status. He wasn't trying to climb to the next rung of achievement. He lowered himself so that he could become the servant of all humanity. And the Apostle Paul says, this is the one that you're following. Remember? This is the one, as you gather to worship in your small community, sing your songs and you pray your prayers, this is the one who I'm calling you to become like. The problem is, from what I hear anyway, you're not becoming very much like him. Things have gotten hard, and I get that. I'm in a prison. But now's not the time to turn on each other. Now's not the time to deepen your misery. Now is the time to look beyond yourself and act in a way that will be in accordance with the one that you say you believe in and that you follow. So he came to us in the flesh, but then he also served us, and when it came down to the end upon his departure from the world, he died a criminal's death. He died on a cross. Shame and humiliation followed him. People mocked him, they tortured him, they hurled insults at him, and he took all of that on. All of that for the sake of you and I. You see, to be a humble person is not to be equated with weakness. It takes great strength to be humble. In the face of other people giving you a piece of their mind, insulting you or making your life more difficult because theirs is, because that's what many people do. They try to make your life more difficult when theirs is. In the face of that, Paul says, sing a different song. Don't give back to people what they deserve. Give them what they need. Be humble. And if you don't have to be in charge or be right or be in control, it makes for a much better, easier path. You see, harmony is what ultimately brings about happiness. I don't know anybody who's embroiled in conflict, who has a pride and an ego where they always have to be right or always are in charge, that are really very happy. Ultimately, what goes with your need to be in charge or in control in all situations is your level of joy. And so Paul is saying, I get that you're in a hard spot, but now's not the time to turn on each other. Now's the time to serve one another, to humble yourself. I got this definition that I loved about humility. It says, humility is the noble choice to forego your status, to deploy your resources, or to use your influences for the good of others before yourself. And I think it takes great strength to do that. Don't you? It is much easier to get your back up and to give people back what they give you in kind. It is much more difficult. But if you don't have to be in charge, if you don't have to be in control, if you don't have to be right, it doesn't mess with your ego. It doesn't mess with your mind. You don't need it, because you can, like Christ, humbly serve those who crucify you. And so he continues. As he writes this, he says, and this is such an important piece to this part of the letter. He says, God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. Sometimes you hit this space and you just think, I can't do it. I know it sounds like the right thing to do. I know when Vince was teaching on it, that it seemed like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try. But then somewhere along Tuesday, when we've just had more than we can bear, we fall back into an old default pattern where we just can't receive it. And Paul is saying, I know you don't think you can do it. I know you think your circumstance is too difficult for this. I know this instruction appears to be more graduate level than what you can handle. But here's the deal. God is working in you, giving you not only the desire, but also the power to do what pleases Him. And what pleases Him? What pleases Him is that you are at peace as best you are able with all men and women. What pleases Him is that there is harmony in your household. What pleases Him is that there's harmony in this fellowship. What pleases Him is that it doesn't always have to be your way, that you can let that go and allow yourself to be, you can trust your life into the hands of God, who is more than capable of working out, completing, and perfecting what began with you. I love it when Paul says God is working in you, giving you the desire and the power to do what pleases Him. And so then he goes on to say, so then, do everything. Not some things, not most things, do everything without complaining and arguing, so that no one can criticize you. Live clean, innocent lives as children of God, shining like bright lights in a world full of crooked and perverse people. Sometimes when we make room for complaint in our life, it takes root and makes a home in us. And we don't want it there, much like the Brady Bunch jingle. We don't want it there, but it makes itself a home in us. You know, the more room you give for complaint to live in your personal world, the more room and space it takes. And honestly, don't point them out, but you know any people who just tend to complain about anything and everything that happens in a given day? As you get a picture of that person or those people in mind, I want you to ask yourself the question, is this a person that I would say is really happy? The answer is no, because you're not complaining a lot if you're happy. You are at peace with your personal world, and there's no need for complaint. And so the Apostle Paul says, you have made space in your life and your community for complaint and mumbling and grumbling and argument, and it needs to go. And so that's where That's where I want to make a point with you today, and we bring this thing to a close. I want you to sing a new song. I want for you to grow in humility. I want for you to become like Christ, not needing to have your own way, but willing to submit your life for the sake of another. And if that occurs, I can guarantee you that your life will become happier, more joyful, more content. You think that it won't. You think that you need to elevate your status, that you need to garner respect, but you don't have to elevate your status. When you offer your life into the hands of God, God is the one who lifts you up. God is the one who raises you up. God is the one who provides for you things that you couldn't have imagined. So you have to trust that and humbly accept what comes your way. The complaining and the arguing, here's my challenge for you guys this week. So this week, this is how we're going to drive complaint out. This is how we're going to drive argument, worry, grumbling, mumbling. I want you to get a jar, and I want you to put this jar in some central place that you will see it in an ongoing way. And every time you find yourself complaining to someone else, about someone else, whether you're speaking those words out loud or whether those words are just in your head, it's just the spirit of complaint, I want you to take and put $1 in that jar. Now, for some of you, this is going to be a very expensive week. If you don't have lots of dollars, you can use quarters. The point is, I want you to realize just how often it is you complain. I want you to see it, because I think people who complain a lot don't really see it. They're not really in touch with it. So every time, now, if you live with somebody who's taking on this challenge and you see that person complaining, I don't want you to lord over them, but I want you to gently remind them that it could be time to put $1 in the jar. Okay? I want to drive complaint out, and there's nothing like it than that which touches our pocketbook, purse, or wallet, right? So every time you find yourself, and you're going to find yourself at some point this week complaining, I want you to take $1 and put it in. Now, at the end of the week, this discipline, this practice is going to put us in touch with just how much or how little we complain. And at the end of the week, you're going to take that money and you're going to do one of two things. First, you can either give it to someone or some group of people, some organization that needs it more than you do. You can just give it as a gift. You can take the fruit of your complaint and do something good with it, right? Or second, especially if this relates to like families, right? Husband, wife, mother, father, kids, parents, whatever. If a lot of the complaining is what happens in your own home, then what I would like for you to do is, with all the monies that you contribute to the ugly jar, at the end of the week, I want you to take what fills that jar and go do something nice with each other. If that's to go out to eat or to go do something else that's fun, I want you to redeem your complaints. I want you to redeem your grumbling, your mumbling, your moaning. And truthfully, once you begin to sing a new song, once you stop singing the grumbling, complaining song, you'll fill your head, it'll be an earworm with another lyric, another song, a more joyful one, and one that will lead to a deeper level of happiness, not only for you, but everybody else around you. Because you may or may not know this, but when you're miserable, everybody else around you is miserable too, because you put that onto others. And so it's time for us, even if we're in a hard space, to just stop, to remember the Christ, to remember how He humbled Himself. He took on the lowest position. He didn't always have to be right. He didn't always need to be in charge. He didn't always have to be in control. He entrusted Himself into the hands of His Father, who dealt rightly and favorably with Him and elevated Him to a status that every knee on planet Earth would one day bow to Him. And if God will take care of His Son in that way, He will take care of His daughters and His granddaughters and His great-grandsons and His children in that way. You can trust Him to do that. You don't have to have your own way. You can let it go. You can sing a new song. So I'm inviting you to travel the path of humility, which leads to harmony, and harmony always leads to happiness. It's just the way that God made things. All right? You willing to give it a shot? You're going to make your life better, and you're going to make everyone else's life around you better, I promise. Okay? If you get to a point where you're spending lots of money, it's just going to give you a temperature, an index on where you are with it. Okay? Let's stand. I think humility is one of the most noble features that exist in a human being. I've never met a humble person that did not draw me or compel me to want to be in relationship and friendship with that person. There is something about a humble person that leads you to want to be in relationship and to want to grow in that way too. And so, I'm telling you, the more humble you become, the happier you become, not the other way around. I bless you. Be people of grace and peace. Be aware of that which drives you away from it. And live to sing a new song. Live to walk a new way. Live to be like the one that you follow. Be people of grace and peace. God bless you.